Esther, the queen who saved her people. Long, long ago, in the fabulous country of Babylon, there lived a king named Ahasuerus. He was the richest, most powerful king in the world. Every one of his commands was instantly obeyed. And if King Ahasuerus proclaimed that any command was a law of the Medes and the Persians, that meant that nobody could ever break it, not even the king himself. Now the king had an extremely beautiful queen named Vashti, who had her own palace and servants and was a very proud, haughty woman. One year, on the king's most important birthday, he decided to hold the biggest, best party anyone had ever seen in Babylon. It lasted 180 days. The last week of the celebration, King Ahasuerus and all his princes and all his high officials were having a drinking party in the throne room. They were talking about beautiful girls, and the king said,
"My wife is the most beautiful woman in the world. I want everyone to see her, so they will know that no greater beauty exists on the earth."
He sent 7 of his high officials to Queen Vashti to tell her to put on her best clothes and come to the throne room so all the men could see how beautiful she was.
"The king wants me to do what?"
cried the queen.
"Does he want to show me off like a racehorse or a prize slave? Does he regard me as a possession to be paraded before the eyes of a bunch of drunken men? I won't do it. Never. Go and tell the king that."
When the king heard her answer, he was furious.
"Who does the queen think she is to disobey me? I am the king. I have the power of life and death over her. She must be punished for her disobedience."
The princes and officials agreed.
"If our wives hear that the queen has disobeyed you, they will all begin to disobey us, and our homes will be chaos."
"What do you suggest, then?"
"Banish her, and get a new queen, and make it a law of the Medes and the Persians that she shall never again enter your presence."
Well, the king was just drunk enough and angry enough to take their advice, and Queen Vashti was sent off to a faraway estate, never to see the king again. When King Ahasuerus stopped being mad at Vashti, he realized he had just lost the most beautiful woman he knew. Where was he to find another? He called his ministers and ordered them to send a decree to every city and village in the kingdom to send their most beautiful maidens, and from them he would choose a new queen. Now it happened that in the king's palace was a high servant of the king named Mordecai, who was one of the many Hebrews who still lived in Babylon. Mordecai was an older man who had raised up his uncle's orphaned child as if she were his own little girl. Esther was her name. Mordecai had watched Esther grow into the most beautiful and charming girl he had ever seen, even more beautiful than Queen Vashti. The king's proclamation gave him an idea. He would take Esther to the palace to compete with the other young maidens. Besides being beautiful, Esther was intelligent and wise, kind and brave. Everyone who knew her loved her. When Esther was brought before the chamberlain of the king's household, a man named Haggai, she was so lovely and delightful that Haggai decided to do all he could to help her win the king's attention. As Mordecai hugged Esther goodbye, he whispered into her ear,
"Don't tell anyone you are a Hebrew. Just keep it quiet for now."
"Very well, Mordecai. Goodbye. I will miss you so."
For a whole year, Esther and all the other maidens were prepared to visit the king. They were bathed in sweet-scented oils and perfumes. Their hair was brushed until it gleamed. Their nails were buffed and painted. They were taught lessons in court behavior and told how to behave before the king. Every night the king would invite a different girl to visit him, and the next morning she would be sent to live in the palace of women. Of all the maidens, Haggai liked Esther best, and told her many secrets of how to especially please the king. He knew just the kind of clothes and jewels the king liked, and advised her on choosing her wardrobe. He even gave her 7 servant girls to help and take care of her.
Oh, thank you, Haggai. You are so kind. I will do everything you say. I know you will help me to do my very best.
Esther took all Haggai's advice, and finally her turn came to see the king. When King Ahasuerus saw Esther, his heart skipped several beats, and he fell in love with her at once. As he spoke with her, he realized that she was much more than simply beautiful, and he knew he did not need to look further to find his new queen. Esther was crowned, and an enormous feast was given throughout the land to celebrate her honor. Meanwhile, Cousin Mordecai was thankful to God that his darling Esther had been honored above all the women in the land. In those days, Mordecai was one of the officials who watched at the gate of the king's palace. One night, as he walked silently down a long hall, he heard whispers coming from behind a great pillar. Suspicious, he tiptoed nearer and recognized the voices of 2 of the king's high officials. Mordecai's eyes opened wide as he listened. They were plotting to kill the king. Mordecai listened until he heard all the details, and then, quiet as a spirit, he hastened away. Now, not just anybody could go and see the king. Only important people could see him, and then only at special times. So Mordecai told Esther about the plot, and Esther rushed to tell the king. The king arrested the 2 wicked officials and had them hung from a tree. After that, he loved Esther more than ever for helping to save his life.
How did you know about the plot, Esther?
One of your very faithful officials, a man named Mordecai, told me about it.
Well, that is splendid. What a good man he is. Call the palace historians. Have them find out all the details, and have it written in the records of the palace.
King Ahasuerus loved to keep track of all the important happenings in his kingdom. There was, among the highest officials of the palace, a man named Haman. He was rich and proud, and thought he was better than anyone else in the kingdom except the king. He bought the king expensive presents and flattered him with praise and compliments. The king was so pleased with Haman that he made him prime minister, higher than all the princes in the kingdom. And he ordered that all the people bow down to Haman. So whenever Haman went by, all the people got down on their knees and pressed their foreheads to the floor in the attitude of worship. Haman loved it. At last he was being given the honor he felt he deserved. But there was one man who would not kneel when Haman went by. It was Mordecai. He would bow his head in respect to Haman, but he would not get down and press his face to the ground. The servants noticed it and asked Mordecai why.
I am a Hebrew. We have been commanded by our God never to bow down to the ground before anyone but the Lord, and I will not do it for Haman.
Well, the servants were angry that they had to bow down, but that Mordecai wouldn't, so they went and told Haman. After that, Haman watched, and sure enough, Mordecai would never bow down. Haman was furious. That stupid Mordecai wouldn't bow because he was a Hebrew. Why, if one Hebrew wouldn't bow down, that meant that all of the Hebrews would refuse to bow down. Haman couldn't stand it. He had to have power. He had to have everyone bow down, or he couldn't be happy. There was only one thing to be done. He would have to see to it that somehow all those irritating Hebrews were killed. Haman plotted and planned, and finally thought of a way. He went to the king.
"Your Majesty,"
he cried, bowing deeply,
"the most terrible news has come to me, and I rushed to you immediately to let you know about it. Did you know that in your kingdom, scattered all about, is a group of wicked people who have no respect for you? These desperate people have sworn not to obey your laws. They even refuse to bow down to you. They're full of treason and will destroy your kingdom if they are not destroyed first. I myself will pay 10,000 pieces of silver into your own treasury to have them all killed."
Why has no one told me this before? Truly, you are my most faithful and trusted servant to bring me this news. Surely such people must be destroyed.
Good, good. And be sure to make it a law of the Medes and the Persians, so your whole kingdom will join together to destroy these terrible people.
And so the king allowed Haman to make it a law of the Medes and Persians, that all the Hebrews in the whole kingdom, men, women, and even little children, were to be attacked by their neighbors on a certain day and killed. All the Hebrews in the kingdom wept and wailed when they heard the news. Mordecai cried out and tore off his fine clothes, put on rough sackcloth, and poured ashes on his hair. He stood before the palace gates and cried loudly with anguish. Esther sent to know why Mordecai was so upset, and he told her about the king's decree.
"Even you will be killed, my dear Esther, because it is a law of the Medes and Persians.
What can we do?
Only you may be able to save us. You must go to the king and beg him to spare us all."
Oh, Mordecai, I can't just go to the king. Don't you know that it's another law of the Medes and Persians that anybody who comes to see the king without an invitation is to be killed?
I have heard that, but I have also heard that if the king sees you and holds out his scepter to you, you will not be killed. Esther, you must try it. The Lord our God may save us, but you must be his instrument. Perhaps that is the reason why you were born so beautiful and brave, so that you could one day save our people.
Esther knew that Mordecai spoke truth, but she was terrified. The king had not called for her to visit him in 30 days. Perhaps he did not love her anymore and would kill her if she came to him uninvited. She trembled as she took a deep breath.
I will do it. And if I die, then I will die. Mordecai, this is what you must do. Send word to all the Hebrews throughout the land. Tell them that they must fast and pray to God with me for 3 days and nights. For only God can save us.
Word was sent, and all the Hebrews in the kingdom fasted and prayed to the Lord for 3 days and nights. Then Esther, dressed in her finest clothes and jewels, and with pounding heart, went to the king's throne room. The king was very busy with important state matters, but when he glanced up and saw his beautiful wife standing quietly at the end of the room, his heart leaped with love.
Why, Esther, my beautiful Esther, I haven't seen you for too long. Come to me, my dear. This work can wait.
And he held out his golden scepter for her to touch.
My dear Majesty,
she said, bowing gracefully.
I didn't realize how much I had missed you, my love. Surely you must have great need to see me at this time. Ask me whatever you wish, and I will grant it, even to half my kingdom.
Dear husband, it is a little thing I ask. Will you come to my apartments for dinner tonight? I have prepared your favorite foods. And bring your servant Haman with you.
That night, King Ahasuerus and Haman ate with the queen. Haman was swollen with self-importance that he alone of all the nobles had been asked to dine with the queen and king.
My dear queen, I can tell that you have a favor to ask. Don't be afraid. I will give you whatever you ask.
Dearest king, I do have a request. And if you and Haman will come to my apartments again tomorrow night, I will prepare a feast for you, and then I will tell you what is in my heart.
As Haman went home that night, he was happier than ever, until he went through the palace gate and saw Mordecai, who still wouldn't bow to him. Then he was black with anger. He told his wife,
I am rich beyond belief. I have the favor of the king and queen. I have relatives who wait on me, and a kingdom which bows to me. But I will never be happy until Mordecai dies.
Then you must get rid of him. Tonight, have our carpenters build a hanging scaffold 75 feet high. And tomorrow, ask the king to hang Mordecai from it. Surely he will not refuse your request.
Gleefully, Haman had the scaffold built that night. But Haman wasn't the only one who didn't sleep that night. King Ahasuerus tossed and turned, and finally, near morning, decided to read a little. He had the palace history books brought to him, and opened them to read about how Mordecai had saved his life. He called to his chamberlain.
This Mordecai who uncovered the plot on my life last year, what did we give him for a reward?
Nothing, sire.
Why, that's terrible. We must reward him. Go find one of my princes or officials right now, and bring him here.
Just outside the door, Haman was waiting for a chance to ask the king to have Mordecai killed. The chamberlain saw Haman waiting and asked him to come in to the king.
Haman, there is someone in my kingdom I wish to honor more than anyone else. Tell me, what do you think I could do to really show a man how much I honor him?
Now, Haman thought the king meant him, Haman.
The king wants to give me even more honors,
thought Haman. He smiled.
This is what I suggest, Your Majesty. First, clothe the man in your own royal robe and your own royal crown. Then, put him on your own royal stallion. Have one of your highest princes lead him through the streets, and have everybody come out and cheer for him.
Wonderful idea! We will do everything you suggest. Now, this is the thing. Last year, Mordecai saved my life. I want you to be the one to dress him in my robe and crown and lead him through the streets.
Haman was so sick with anger and jealousy he almost threw up, but he had to do what the king said. He got back from his humiliating journey through the city just in time to get ready to go to the banquet in the queen's palace. After the wonderful food, as the king and queen and Haman were relaxing, the king asked,
My dear, the time has come for you to tell me your request. I will surely grant it, up to half my kingdom.
My lord king, you can keep me from death. Someone in your kingdom has ordered that I and all my relatives and all my people are to be killed. If we had only been sold into slavery, I wouldn't have asked anything of you. But now I plead for the lives of my people and myself.
She looked up at him with great pleading eyes. Fury boiled up in the king. Who on earth would dare to threaten the life of his beautiful wife and her people?
Who is the man who has ordered this thing? I will tear him limb from limb with my own hands.
There!
pointed Esther.
Haman is the man who has tricked you into killing your queen and all her people.
The king went white as he remembered that he had declared the law of the Medes and Persians against all the Hebrews. He was shocked that his favorite counselor had tricked him. Enraged, he leaped to his feet and strode into the garden to get hold of himself. Haman threw himself at the queen's feet. He grasped her around the knees and wept.
Please, please, your majesty, I didn't know you were a Hebrew. Save me from the king's wrath. I'll do anything.
Just then the king came back into the room. He saw Haman with his arms around Esther's knees and simply exploded.
You dog! You swine! Will you embrace the queen before my very eyes? Guards! Guards, seize this man!
Guards and officials rushed into the room. One of them told the king that Haman had built a tall scaffold to hang Mordecai on. King Ahasuerus sneered as he looked down at the trembling Haman.
Take Haman, then, and hang him upon that same gallows until he is dead.
And it was done. Then Esther begged the king to change the decree that all the Hebrews be killed.
I cannot do that, for it is a law of the Medes and Persians. But I will send another decree, that the Hebrews may arm themselves and fight to defend themselves from anyone who tries to kill them.
The decree was sent. On the fateful day, the Hebrews were armed and ready to meet their attackers. Many Babylonians chose not to fight, and of those who did, 75,000 Babylonians were killed. Mordecai was found by the king to be such a wise and intelligent man that King Ahasuerus promoted him to be the prime minister, the second most powerful man in the kingdom. And Esther sent forth a decree.
Beginning this day, and forevermore, all the Hebrews in the world will celebrate the day of their deliverance from death, and call the celebration Purim.
And Hebrew and Jewish people throughout the world still celebrate Purim to this day.